All right, so what a day. Monday was weird, a lot of things dying and all that, but today's been pretty nice. Lots of movement upwards. Let me just go ahead and get everybody to join. So, a lot happened. I mean, earnings were crazy. Now, earnings are difficult to play. So, when a company is about to give their report for how they did in the last quarter, what can happen is they could have done really well. And let's say maybe they had said that they would have an earnings of $10, right? Just making up numbers for easier conversation. So they said they're going to make earnings of $10, but maybe they hit an earnings of $6. However, they made really good progress on a lot of things, and there's a lot of potential for amazing work in the next upcoming earnings. Then that company can actually skyrocket, and the stock itself may go from a value of like 100 to 130. That's a huge jump, especially if you're playing call options on that earning. Similarly, though, a stock could have really good earnings and sink also. So maybe the stock said they'll have a quarterly earning of $10, and then their earnings were really just 17. They actually beat the 10. They had earnings of $17 or something. They can actually sink because all the investors may have pulled out their money. They're like, all right, great, good job. I'm out of here now. I'm going to go try someone new. There could be a lot of things, right? The earnings reports are basically a lottery play, often a very expensive lottery play, but there's a lot to have to win here. And it's pretty much a 50-50 play right there, right? So you can buy calls or you can buy puts based off of whether or not you think that the earnings is going to make the company actually fly up or fall down. Now, today was crazy. So, I mean, every day it's crazy with stock markets, right? So that's why it's so much fun. Roblox, rather new company last year, gave their earnings and they got shat on. But Space today was flying, literally, no pun intended, because they actually went ahead and have said that they can now allow people to buy tickets. And a ticket to go to space for a little quick trip is going to cost $450,000, right? So this is basically a fun thing for the luxuriously wealthy. Now, I'm sure companies and banks and whatnot are going to start offering payment programs for many, like people that aren't multimillionaires, so that you can actually afford this, kind of like a space mortgage in a sense, because this is pretty much how much a house can cost in many states in America. And you get to have a pretty much unrealistic experience, right? Because none of us have ever had this experience. None of our parents have ever had this experience unless you work for NASA and are an astronaut. So it's pretty amazing, and the price is kind of justified in that way, I suppose. So space was actually up today quite a bit, jumped up 32%. It's down 20% year to date because when it first came out and as an IPO, it came out in the year of meme stocks where space just got pumped up big time to a huge number, right? So it was just up too much, and it obviously wasn't gonna go there today. Even now, though, as we're talking, space is actually has been able to break 11, so that's pretty good. It started the day at 9:20 pre-market, and then yeah, it reached $11. So that's pretty good. I'm in calls for space, hoping tomorrow it'll continue going, and that's always exciting. But Space didn't have earnings today. They were pretty much the talk of the town today because of everything they did. It was a pretty green day though, right? 9 out of 11 sectors actually finished higher. Technology led the rally, charging 2.6%. Consumer discretionary also, and energy dipped 1%. Bitcoin blazed right now, currently breaking through 44K. It's at 44,600, which is great. For anyone that picked up Bitcoin under 40K, they're at a pretty safe spot. If anyone grabbed Bitcoin at 35, 36K, they're confident, they're comfortable. It's not going to sink right now, and you just sit back and wait till the roller coaster rides, eventually hits 60K. Now, what happened to Roblox? So hilarious, right? They posted Q4 earnings. They were supposed to do well, right? And they were pretty close to it. But what happened? So loss per share was about 0.13 cents. Not the worst, right? They weren't completely trash. Roblox uses bookings to represent a commitment to spend money. Revenue realizes the actual commitment as spent. A good example of how this works, practically speaking, is when users buy Robux, which is the game's own currency, Robux. Once users spend that money, the booking is assigned as revenue. Revenue is the actual figure that Roblox weighs against its losses. Because of that, the company's $708 million loss from operations outweighed its $568 million in revenue. Although that loss is probably disappointing, Roblox's loss actually narrowed overall, and things were pretty bad. The company's biggest costs were research and development, R&D, which is pretty much a huge issue in any company, wherever you work, right? If you're developing something, you have a research and development company segment, and that section is going to be struggling for money because that's what research isn't free. So that happens, and then their developer exchange fees, another 22% of costs. That said, most of the sources of Roblox's costs and expenses were pretty balanced, with the exception of sales and marketing, was significantly less expensive. I mean, marketing isn't that expensive in the individual outlook compared to research and development or developer exchange fees. The other reason for the drop was bookings are usually a leading indicator of revenue, and the company's key metric estimates from January 22 are actually alarming. Roblox's bookings figures for the month was up just 2 to 3%, presumed to be $220 million. These figures indicate that Roblox's revenue is about to decelerate rapidly, and that's about it. So they had their fun. When the company first launched its IPO, it went up quite high, then it sank back down, and today it really hit rock bottom. So what's to come? No one knows. It's down 12% after hours. Marriott was the real winner with earnings, though. Revenue grew a whopping 105% year over year, which is unrealistic, bringing them to all-time highs, which makes sense because a lot of people are using hotels, not only when they're traveling, but also just because no one wants to really go back home to a house that might have many other people in there. You have to understand that a lot of people live in houses that are populated by 2 to 3 different individual families, right? For example, in New York, a common scene is there might be 5 different individual men living in the same house, just paying their own portion of the rent, having their own bedroom. Now, you don't want to be in there with 4 other men who maybe some of them are exposed to COVID, right? So that's been a big issue in the past. A lot of nurses, doctors, they couldn't go back home to their families because they were working with COVID patients, so they had to stay at hotels. So many more people had to stay at hotels than have ever had to stay at hotels before, and that Marriott really backed off of. Airbnb, really good, also flew up 4% after hours. And Upstart, right, grew revenue 252%, and it's actually surged 30% after hours. So huge comeback from Upstart, which has pretty much been dying in the past few months. And tomorrow we'll continue on to see what else is to come. The most exciting earnings tomorrow that I'm looking forward to is, of course, Nvidia. Nvidia is going to be amazing. I predict that it's going to go up, but we'll see, right? And I'm also looking forward to Cisco. So last year, last year, basically the previous earnings Cisco gave, they sank, they dipped big time. But after dipping the next morning, they started soaring up. Everyone was investing into it. Everyone was buying into it. All the analysts had labeled it as a buy stock. So I'm looking forward to the same kind of thing happening again, pretty much. And those, I remember vividly, those Cisco contracts, they were literally 10 cents for a call, 10-cent calls, and they went up to 70 cents. So it was a 7x play. And that's pretty much one of those plays where you want a full port and put everything into it. So let's see if that happens again. If it does, then that's going to lead to an amazing weekend for me and any of you guys that follow these plays. So let's see what happens. And yeah, that's about it for now. So thanks a lot for joining. Have a good night, you guys, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning.